Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. My name's Katie and I upload book-related videos every single Wednesday, and today I'm very excited because this is my favorite type of video to film, where I find a psychological thriller not a lot of people have read. This only has like 100-something Goodreads reviews, I think. But today I'm going to be reviewing Berlin Syndrome by Melanie Justin. First, I'm going to review the book, and then I'm going to also review the movie at the end, but there will be no spoilers for either, as always. So in Berlin Syndrome, our protagonist is Claire. She's in her 20s. She's a photographer from Australia, and she goes to Berlin for the purposes of basically making a photography book about the city. And while she's there, she meets Andy, who's a local English teacher. They go out a couple times, then she goes back to his place and realizes he's not gonna let her leave. And not surprisingly, given the title of the book is Berlin Syndrome, that's a play on Stockholm Syndrome, so that's definitely a huge portion of the book. Now, before I get into the pros and cons like I normally do, this isn't a pro or con, this is just kind of a statement about the book. But I could see a lot of people not necessarily loving the writing style. I personally did, but it is kind of, I don't know how to describe it, distant. So before I even get into the review, I would just recommend, if you're thinking about buying this, just read the first few pages online. And I think if you enjoy her writing style in the first few pages, you'll definitely like the book. Okay, so getting into the pros, I think if you've read, what's it called, Stolen by Lucy Christopher, that also deals with a girl who's kidnapped in Stockholm Syndrome. That's a young adult book. Berlin Syndrome is definitely kind of an amped up, grown up, much darker version of that book. Now, I personally thought the writing was absolutely lovely, and the reviews for this book, I want to say, I forget, at least when I was looking through the reviews, I saw a lot of 2- and 3-star reviews, so a lot of people did not fall head over heels in love with this book. Now, I would say I didn't fall head over heels in love with it, but I definitely did really like it. I really feel like this is a well-written, really fascinating, really smart psychological thriller. And I feel like the term psychological thriller gets thrown around a lot, and people will be like, oh, I read this psychological thriller, when really it's a mystery novel or it's just kind of a normal thriller. But this is a psychological thriller kind of in the true sense of the genre, where you really are getting into Claire's head and seeing the Stockholm Syndrome slowly take place. The pacing of the book was also really interesting, and I liked it, but again, I could see a lot of people not liking the pacing, and I think that might be why some people didn't like the book. So with the pacing, it is on the slower side. It's not as if tons and tons is happening in this book. It's really just she's kidnapped by him and the two of them in their apartment having conversation, things happening and getting darker and darker, and the Stockholm Syndrome taking place. The only other really things that happen in the book are Andy's conversations when he goes to visit his father. But other than that, I think if you're looking for a fast-paced thriller, this is not the book for you. The way the book is set up is also interesting in that it's told from both Claire and Andy's points of view, but there's also two timelines. So one timeline is when she arrives in Berlin and she's kidnapped by him and she meets him, all of that stuff, and the other timeline that's kind of interspersed is when she's been kidnapped for a very long time. And the author definitely doesn't baby the reader. She's not like, this timeline is what you're reading right now and this timeline is what you're reading right now. It's definitely kind of all over the place and adds to the reader's confusion, but I think that kind of helps, because I think it helps you get into that mindset Claire is in, where she's also very confused. Now, I do personally have one con, and it is kind of a big one, and that's the fact that I didn't feel fully invested and engaged until like halfway through the book. Because like I said, one timeline is where she's initially going to Berlin, she meets him and she's kidnapped, and that timeline, she doesn't realize she's kidnapped until like halfway through the book, and it wasn't till that point that I really felt like the book took off. So now in terms of the movie, I have to say I thought the acting was phenomenal. So Claire is played by Teresa Palmer, and you might recognize her from what, like Lights Out, Warm Bodies, stuff like that. I will say with brown hair, she's kind of looks like Kristen Stewart, but with emotion. I'm kidding, I actually really like Kristen Stewart, but she's not like the most emotive actor. But Teresa Palmer's acting and her facial expressions were just excellent, just spot on. Andy is played by Max Reimlet. You might recognize him from Sense8, and I thought it was kind of funny because when she was like trying to get out and there's that big lock on the door, I wanted to be like, Wolfie, I know you're a locksmith, but like, come on. I would say that the book and movie were equally good, but just very, very different. The main difference, and this isn't a spoiler, is just, I'll say a lot more happens in the movie than happens in the book. Like I said, the book is really just her trapped there, both of what's going through their heads and him visiting his father. The movie has a lot more to do with Andy and his school and his students, and there's also just a lot more escape attempts in the movie, but I definitely think that worked for the movie, because I think if you directly translated the book into a movie, I could see how that might be a little bit dull. So overall, I really enjoyed Berlin Syndrome. I thought it was fascinating, and if any of you guys know of any other books like this, definitely let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, please let me know if there are any other psychological thrillers you want me to check out, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.